Hey there, friends. Steve Dawson here, coming to you from Nashville. And I just wanted to talk about this tuning that I frequently use, which is a low C tuning on the lap steel, or the Weissenborn in this case. And I've talked about this tuning before on other videos, but this one in particular, I'm going to take a look at playing in a minor key and some of the things that you can do to make this tuning sound minor. In another video, I will talk about making this tuning sound major. And that is why this tuning is cool. It kind of goes either way. So first of all, let me just show you, if you haven't used this tuning before, or refresh your memory if you've used it before and are not currently in it. The spelling of the tuning from low to high goes C. It's a low C. And it's a little bit funny tuning wise, because generally it's kind of a little flabby. So I don't get too hung up on the precision of the tuning, so to speak. And weirdly, to a tuner, I tune it quite flat because of the flabbiness. When the attack of the note hits, the note goes sharp. So if I tune it flat, it compensates for itself. Although if I let it ring, it goes back to being flat, which is kind of weird. So I try and mute it off, I guess. So anyway, it goes low C, then G, then C, then G, then C, then D. So technically, this is sort of I think of it as a C sus2 tuning because there's no third in it, so it's not clearly defined as major or minor, and that's why I like this tuning. I'm able to flip in between both. So strummed as a chord, you have the C sus2 chord. It's quite a pleasing chord to hear. So that's what it sounds like. I use this tuning all the time, both on solo gigs and also on sessions. It's not always suitable, but it's quite frequently. It sounds pretty cool. So we're talking about the minor key here, and one of the first ways to really wrap your head around the kind of thing that I was doing at the beginning and understanding how to play in a minor sounding tuning is to understand the minor scale. And the easiest way to do that is to think of the minor scale from the root note, which is, well, it's on the 6th string, on the 4th string, and the 1st string, or is it the 2nd string? So these notes that I'm going to show you apply to any one of those 3 strings because they are all the same. And so let's look at it on the 2nd string because it's nice and clear. So if you start on the open string, that's C, and then D is at the 2nd fret, E flat at the 3rd fret, that's the flat 3, and that's what defines it as a minor key. Then the 4, which is at the 5th fret, the 5, which is at the 7th fret, the flat 6, which is at the 8th fret, and not overly useful in a bluesy kind of context like we're talking about here. It's a little bit of a, I wouldn't say it's a dodgy note, but it's not overly useful. I tend to kind of skip it, but that's the note. And the 10th fret is the flat 7, and then back to the root note at the 12th fret. And then, of course, it repeats itself going up past the 12th fret. But in that little window there of the open string to the 12th fret, you have the minor scale. That's the C minor scale. Put in context of C, there's a C chord. So you can hear how it gives it a minor tonality in that key. Now the first little variation of that is that I always like to at least be aware of, not necessarily add in, but at least be aware of the blue note, which is the flat 5, and it's found at the 6th fret. It's not a note in the scale, but it is a cool sounding note as a passing tone usually. So you might want to use it like this. So that's like, that's the 5 to the flat 5 to the 4, flat 3, open, flat 7 to the root. So that's how the blue note is useful as well. Okay, now let's take a look at the exact same scale on the 3rd string, or the G, and this is also applicable to the G, which is the 5th string. So you have these 2 octaves. Now in this case, we're starting on the 5th of the key that we're in, so this is the 5 of C. And then we have the flat 6 at the 1st fret, the flat 7 at the 3rd fret, the root note, or the C, at the 5th fret, the 2 at the 7th fret, the flat 3 at the 8th fret, the 4 at the 10th fret, and back to the 5 at the 12th fret. Okay, so for this tuning, if you can memorize those two patterns and apply them to all strings, you've got all the notes covered for a minor key. So we've got down to the 3rd string here. So once you familiarize yourself with the actual notes, it's fun to just kind of play around and get really comfortable with the tonality of a minor key. So have a listen to this for a sec and try this yourself. So I'm going to start with just a big old open chord to give us some context. So then I'm going to just play some simple stuff, single note, based around those patterns that I showed you. So there you go. There's some C minor stuff all to mess around with. Now here's a couple things to throw in. One of the things that I was doing was pulling off to the open string, which you can kind of do from any note. So it's a good way to kind of augment the rhythmic qualities of what you're doing. So instead of going 5, 3, open, I'm going 5, open, 3, open. So it's kind of a nice way to augment what's happening with the scale notes. Let's try that again. Okay, and now two more little things. With the top string, you also want to know what the minor scale is, and it's a little funny because it starts on the 2, or the 2nd degree of the scale. So that's a D. The 3rd, the flat 3rd, which makes it minor, is at the 1st fret. Important note. The 4 is at the 3rd fret. The 5 is at the 5th fret. Very convenient. The flat 6 is at the 6th fret. The flat 7 is at the 8th fret. And the root note, weirdly, is at the 10th fret. So where this comes in very handy is if you're doing kind of dobro-ish licks almost. And let me just show you a couple of those. Okay, so let's try out this lick. Nice short little minor lick. So we're using the 1st fret of the 1st string, pull off to the open string, play the open 2nd string, back to the 1st string, up to the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, slide down to the 2nd fret, open, with a pull off. So now we've got... Now letting those strings ring out against each other is a very cool thing because you're sort of playing around with the idea of this note at the 1st fret is the same as this note at the 3rd fret, and this note at the 2nd fret of the 2nd string is the same as the open 1st string. So that lick uses a lot of unison notes, the same note played on a different fret on a different string. One more time. And then end it by going... So I'm going 3rd fret of the 3rd string, open 3rd string, open 2nd string, and then sliding from the 3rd to the 5th fret of the 3rd string. So now we have... Do that one more time. And lastly, just a little bit about what I was doing at the beginning, which was basically keeping a sort of a Travis picking thing going with your right-hand thumb, which is on the 6th and 4th strings. This is not overly useful if you're playing accompaniment for somebody, but if you are playing some solo thing, or I find for writing this is very useful. I'm writing a piece. keeping a bass pattern going is cool. So what I was doing at the beginning was keeping that bass pattern going and throwing in some of the notes from the minor scale, augmented by some chord changes. So let's just take a look at that idea. Here's the bass line, just the root note on 2 strings. And now on the root note, I'm going to add in some notes that we've learned from the minor scale. Simple. That can go all the way up to the 12th fret, of course. Then the real trick is to syncopate things by throwing those melodic notes in between the bass notes. So that idea is like this. There's the bass note, and the melody notes in between. That's the most basic version of that. So a combination of playing on the beat and off the beat will give you something like this. Some of the chords that I was playing were the 4 chord, which is at the 5th fret. Leaving the top 2 strings open gives you some nice tonality. It definitely floats the line between is this a major chord or a minor chord, and it can be either. It kind of sounds minor because of the context, but really there's nothing defining it as a minor chord. I was also playing the 5 chord, which is at the 7th fret, and I was playing the flat 7 chord, which is at the 10th fret. So all that stuff together gives you something like what we were doing at the beginning. Have fun with this. Enjoy. This is Open C, my Open C tuning. There are other kinds of Open C tuning, but this is a cool one. Thanks for watching. Enjoy.